Joining me by phone this morning is U.S. Senator Tom Cotton. Good morning, Senator, and thank you for joining me this morning.
Good morning, Jonathan. It's good to be on with you. Hello to all your listeners back home. Wish I could be with you.
Well, we appreciate that very much. Good to be able to talk with you. Several things we want to talk about this morning. First of all, one of the stories that we've been hearing a lot of is about the U.S. Supreme Court's decision yesterday overturning Texas's abortion law in a 5-3 decision. What were your thoughts on that decision from the High Court?
I was very disappointed, Jonathan, with that decision. I think we should do everything we can to try to protect the lives of our citizens, not just the lives of the unborn, but the lives of mothers as well. Texas, I thought, took prudent steps to ensure that abortion clinics had doctors with admitting privileges at nearby hospitals in case a procedure went unexpectedly poorly, and that could happen in any kind of outpatient procedure like that. And the Supreme Court, as it too often does in the abortion context, bent the rules to try to satisfy the demands of those who think we should have abortion on demand in this country. I think we should do a better job of protecting the lives not just of the unborn, but of mothers as well.
Now, Arkansas in recent years has toughened the state's abortion laws here in Arkansas. Do you think this decision will affect those Arkansas laws that are on the books?
Well, it's possible, Jonathan. You'll have to have our Attorney General's office go through, kind of carefully applying the reasoning of yesterday's decision to our laws. I do know that there are some aspects, though, of the Texas law that were not challenged in court specifically because the far-left abortion-on-demand groups didn't think that they could prevail. For instance, Texas also has a law that would prohibit abortions more than 20 weeks into the pregnancy when modern science shows that an unborn child can feel pain. So the fact that even the far-left groups behind this lawsuit didn't challenge that part of the Texas law may bode well for some of the similar regulations that we have in Arkansas.
Another Supreme Court decision last week blocked President Obama's executive action concerning immigration. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I strongly oppose the president's unilateral efforts to grant amnesty to millions of illegal immigrants. That it's not only unwise immigration policy, but it's deeply foreign to our system of checks and balances and the constitutional separation of powers in which the legislature makes the law and the president executes the law as it's written. I think what Congress needs to do now is to respond to the very strong and expressed opinions of the American people, which is to get our border under control, to enforce our immigration laws, and to reduce levels of immigration until our economy is to the point where it can support the workers that we have coming in and the workers that we already have here in this country. Wages are rising again, and people are getting back into the workforce.
Previous presidents have used executive actions in the past. Why has President Obama been attacked for using executive actions?
Well, it's really the scope of executive action, Jonathan, that determines whether appropriate or not. We should encourage presidents to issue executive orders that are providing clear guidance to execute their intent to the executive branch. So if the president, for instance, wants to issue an executive order that governs how paperwork is processed or how we respect the rights of privacy of citizens who are submitting papers to the government, that's a good thing because it harmonizes activities across different kinds of agencies to ensure that they are serving the intent of the president who the American people elected. But if the president is changing the law or he's undermining the law as it was written by Congress, then that's totally foreign to our system of constitutional government. It's the Congress that is elected and accountable to the American people to write the laws that govern their conduct.
Okay. U.S. Senator Tom Cotton joining us here on KASU. Last week, British voters decided to leave the European Union in the so-called Brexit vote. You seem to be in support of that decision. Why were you in support of that?
Well, so I did not express an opinion during the campaign itself because I thought it was not my place or the place of other Americans to make that decision for Great Britain. That was a choice for them. They're a sovereign people. They're one of the world's oldest and original democracies. Now, I am sympathetic to some of the many complaints that the British had about unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats in Brussels running their lives and dictating the content of their laws to them. But that was the choice for them to make. And now that they have made that choice, I think it is incumbent upon us that we stand by our ally, that we strengthen our special relationship with Great Britain. They remain our strongest partner in NATO. They remain a key part of our Five Eyes intelligence sharing agreement, along with Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. I think that we should begin immediate negotiations on a trade agreement with Great Britain, whether it's a bilateral agreement between the United States and Great Britain, or perhaps expanding the Five Eyes intelligence agreement into a Anglosphere trade zone. What we should not do is what President Obama said that he would do, which is put Great Britain at the back of the line.
What do you think this will do with this vote from the Brexit decision? What do you think that will do by way of affecting the economy of the United States, or do you think it will have an effect on the economy?
I think in the long term, it has the potential to be beneficial for both the United States and Great Britain. There's obviously been some volatility in the markets over the last 3 or 4 days, but we shouldn't judge the overall health of the economy based on a specific market on a specific day of trading. In the end, Great Britain is the 5th largest economy in the world, and it's one of the most free market economies along with the United States. So to have Great Britain freed from the regulations of the unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats in Brussels, and as a potential trading partner with the United States and the rest of North America and the rest of the Anglosphere, in the long run, it could be healthy for both Great Britain and for the United States.
U.S. Senator Tom Cotton joining us here on KASU. Last week, Senator Cotton, as you know, Congress considered legislation related to gun control in light of the Orlando shooting at the Pulse nightclub a few weeks ago. U.S. Senate failed to pass 4 of those bills. Tell us what were in those bills and why those bills did not pass.
Well, first off, John, I'm going to back up and say the attacks in Orlando were acts of terrorism, and we should have been focused more on the failures of our government's policy towards the Islamic State and al-Qaeda that has led to an increasing pace of these attacks. However, having taken those votes, I thought the most responsible position was to require anyone who's on the no-fly or the additional screening lists to take a pause before they try to buy a firearm and allow the FBI to establish to the satisfaction of an independent judge that they shouldn't be allowed to buy that firearm. I thought that balanced the interest at stake, both our interest, obviously, in not having potential terrorists get their hands on any kind of firearm, but also the interest of the many citizens who have been unjustly and inadvertently caught up in the bureaucracy that some of these lists have. You know, famously, Teddy Kennedy, the liberal Democratic senator from Massachusetts, for several months was having trouble getting on a plane because his name or a name like his was on those lists. So I thought the legislation for which I voted best balanced interest at stake, but also thought the entire debate missed the point to some degree because we should have been focused on the failures of our counterterrorism policy that brought it to this point in the first place.
Some people say that something needs to be done to stop mass shootings like what happened from happening in the future. What do you think needs to be done to be able to stop this? Is it maybe strengthening the gun control laws or assessing whether the laws even work in this nation?
Well, I think we have too many laws on the books that the administration seems uninterested in enforcing. For example, we all know that most criminals, certainly terrorists, don't tend to buy their guns through legal means. They tend to use straw purchasers, for instance. Yet the administration consistently deprioritized the investigation and prosecution of straw purchasers or gun running rings. They've instead tried to focus on passing new gun control laws, which simply have proven they can't work. I mean, California banned the kind of firearms that the San Bernardino shooter used. France has some of the world's most draconian gun control laws that didn't stop the Paris attacks from happening.
Right. Senator Tom Cotton joining us here on KASU. There are multiple media reports that state that Republican presumptive nominee Donald Trump may be looking at you as a possible vice presidential pick or a higher level position in his administration. Have you been contacted about that?
If anybody's looking for me at that, they're looking from a distance because now I've had no conversations along those lines and don't expect that to happen. I've got more than enough on my plate serving Arkansas in the Senate and trying to be a good dad to my 14-month-old son.
Well, I understand that, but if it was offered, if it was put on the table, would you take it?
I mean, like I said, Jonathan, I don't expect that to happen. There's no indication that it will, and we're just a few weeks away now from the convention, so I assume they're moving down rapidly on the track. I would, of course, offer my counsel to Donald Trump or anyone else who's running for office, to try to influence the views of the people who are going to be making decisions about our state and our country. But I have no reason to believe that anything like that will happen.
What are your thoughts on Donald Trump?
Well, I certainly don't want Hillary Clinton to be our president, and I've long said I will support the Republican nominee. Donald Trump now has the chance to, or the responsibility to unify our party and try to defeat what would be a third Obama-Clinton term. He's made some mistakes. He's stated some positions with which I don't agree, and he said some things that I would not support. But I can't support, a third Clinton-Obama term.
Some people have been really concerned about those mistakes that Donald Trump has made, and there's even some thoughts about possibly a dump Trump, if you will, during the Republican National Convention that's coming up in a few weeks. What are your thoughts on that possibly happening at the RNC?
I personally don't see that happening. I'm not a delegate for the Arkansas delegation, so I won't have a say in it. It's ultimately up to the delegates themselves, but I don't foresee that happening.
And for those who say they're calling maybe for a third-party movement among conservatives during this election cycle, what would you say to those people who may be thinking third party?
I think a third party simply guarantees the third Obama-Clinton term, which this country can't afford.
U.S. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you so much for joining us this morning here on KASU. We look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's U.S. Senator Tom Cotton, 832.